Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's March 15th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And for the most part, it was a range day. We spent basically the entire or 90% of the trading day inside this blue range here. We had a little failed break lower, which is always a great opportunity to try to buy and catch one of these. A lot of times these will be important lows. I didn't mark this one down here, but this is one you could always argue to be green. And you got to be careful with these because actually this one never triggered and this one did, but it's not a very good signal bar. So there really wasn't a failure, but a lot of times these will break a tick higher and they'll push it down a couple more times before it bounces. You're better to wait on the reversal pattern or a higher low. And the only thing you got here was a reversal pattern, which we'll talk about it. And normally I would mark these blue. We've had some discussion in the forum, and people feel like that I ought to be marking reversal pattern. The more advanced stuff should all be green, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I'm going to do it just to keep everybody happy. I'm not going to argue with it. We got people at all levels, and of course you got a lot of people that are just basically in kindergarten. And then you got a lot. Then you got some that are in grade school, and you got some college graduates, and then you probably got some doctorates of chart reading, and so we got people of all levels. But we tend to have more of the basic newbie kindergarten types that are just trying to learn how to read a chart, a naked chart. So for that reason, I'm going to go along with them, and we'll just start. If it's not a basic second entry or range rules, then I'm going to mark it green, and uh, and I'll explain whether I like the trade or don't, or I'll try to throw in a little more there. So, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. But that's reason you're going to see a lot more greens than you did anything else on the chart anymore. So um, maybe we change it down the road. But anyway, we had this one leg down and we went sideways, and the second leg started here, and you can see we basically had two measured legs. You won't see that type of measured leg very often, but really what you got is some sideways stuff here. Generally, I would measure from here where the two-legged correction is, and that still gets you in the ballpark. We went a little further, so but really if you look at it, we started down again here, and we pretty much got a measured leg. Uh, then we had a little spike in channel here. That the channel has two legs, and they're basically two measured legs. We actually ended up rallying again even harder late in the day, another big strong move up. But that was all after 2 o'clock. So really for uh, all intents and purposes today, it was a range day with the failed breakout that led to a big rally up. And we found resistance here and turned back down again. So anyway, let's back out. We'll talk about the trades, and it won't take long. There's not a lot of trades today, and we'll wrap this up. I still haven't decided. I may take a day or two off this week. I haven't decided yet. The weather was terrible today, and I think it's supposed to rain again tomorrow, so I probably won't take off unless the weather's nice or something. So, but I may take a day. I may just take a long weekend and take Thursday or Friday off or something like that. So anyway, let's talk about the trade. 7 o'clock came right down through here, and so you really don't get a chance to enter until, notice that we're working up, and you get a first entry, but you also get a break of your trend line there, a new high, and that's a second entry short. It's a little bit congestive, but I believe that's just because we're finding the resistance right there after the break in the new high. And with that big a move down, you would expect prices to try to make another leg. So we're just looking for a second leg down here anyway. And I like this just because it's a second entry and the trends played out. It's a little bit congestive, so you might let it break lower and drop a limit order a little higher to see if you can get a little better entry. I still like it. It works regardless. And once it was obvious it was a range here, you pretty much had to play the range rules. So Uh, there's another possible long here. I didn't mark it just because there's not much room between there and the high, and this high is actually a little bit lower there, and this it's actually more like that. So you don't have a lot of room there, um, but we push on up. We fell out the upper side, and you get another second entry short on a failed breakout, and so I like that one just to trade it back into the range again. There's a lower high here, but not much room left. This line here that you see right here wouldn't have been there. That's on this second part of the range. There's another range right across here. And you might have looked for the measured move on down eventually. So as far as the range goes, like, let me just show you that because that may not make sense to some people. You just measure the range and look for a measured move, and that's really what we had right there. But we really went into a separate, distinct range right here. But anyway, there's a failed second entry long here. Notice the new low, new high, first entry, and then second entry. But that's also first entry, second entry short, and big nice bearish bar. I like that one. Come down, you make a new low, first entry, second entry. I didn't mark this one because of all that support there. It's one you could argue for. If you could get a good enough entry to get out before these lows, maybe you take it. But it wouldn't have, if you'd have put your sell stop up, sell limit order up here high enough, it wouldn't have got filled. So it didn't really matter. But we finally push on down, and then we get a first entry, second entry. This is a double bottom. Count that as a new low. First entry, second entry. Nice bearish bar. So another second entry, and this is. We've pushed on out of the range now, and you can clearly see we're making lower highs and lower lows, and we're kind of working on down there. We bounce here, first entry, second entry, but signal bar is no good. You could look at that as a failed second entry long, but there's not much room there. I just don't like going short there. And we touch the bottom here. Notice we made that low. We test it once. We come back. We test it again. It didn't really look like rejection there, but when we came back again and it breaks lower and turns up, if we break higher, you're probably going to at least get a scalp out of that. You can see how we've closed way off that low several times. There's a little bit of congestion, but the reason is there's still a lot of selling, but they just can't get through there. The buying is overpowering it. And so I like that one to the upside. And then notice we're working up. You get a first entry short. Then you get a second entry short that fails. This is where you'd look for a possible reversal off the lows. I like that one. It doesn't end up reversing, but it's an easy scalp. Again, normally I'd mark that blue. I marked it green for the reasons we talked about. Then you get a close outside in the lower high here. This is really tempting, but I was afraid of it because there was a good chance we may go make a new high here because that's the first break of this. It could be. It almost looks like there's probably two overshoots to that. That really looks valid to me. And so I think we had a couple of overshoots here and then reversed. And if you looked at it like that, if you saw it like that, you might take that trade. It's one of those that could go either way. I didn't mark it, but it could go either way. There's a failure here, but that's not a good failure setup. And unfortunately, the bottom drops out. And unless you entered here, you just don't get a chance to enter this one. And you just don't want to enter way down here because it's gonna come back to this. EMA is like a magnet. When prices get away from it, they snap back. It pulls them back. It draws them back like a magnet does. And when prices approach it, it acts like a magnet and repels it. So this time it pushed through and it got repelled off the low side and a new trend started. And that's what'll happen. You'll see it swinging back and forth kind of in these in-between zones. But generally, when prices are rallying, it pulls back to it. It's trying to pull back, and then when they get there, generally it repels them and they turn back the other way. So study some charts and you'll see that. But anyway, you drop down here. We talked about this. This is risky, but if you catch this trade, you can ride this all the way up, and there's no real serious corrections there. You can just ride, if you can catch a runner on that, your stop never even gets any heat at all, and it's an easy run all the way up. And if you did catch one, the way I would do it is just each time you make a swing low, move your stop up until you get stopped out, and you never would have got stopped out. You'd ridden it all the way up. Um, there's a failed second entry short here. Notice the new low, and you get a first entry, and then a second entry. It closes above. I like going long there. I actually traded that, and I recorded it. Did a live trade example of that one. So it's out there. It actually pulls back again. If you didn't enter here, you might enter right here. I didn't mark that one, but uh, you could actually go back in right there. Uh, when it broke lower and went back up the upside, you could enter again. And there is a new low, so there's another reversal pattern right here. But this one's a little bit away from the EMA, and probably a little bit of congestion there. There's actually a little congestion here, but I still like this one because the fact that it tried to go lower, you know there's going to be trap traders on that second entry short. Some of you watching probably went short right there. While this, anybody can read the charts looking to go long right there. And off it goes. And I marked a bunch of green ones in here. This is a really strong, one of those really strong trends. You can clearly see that key entry point. Any bullish bar that came back, look how small they are too in some cases. You could have entered any of those. That's the best you're going to get on a day like this. Once you got way up here, I wouldn't risk it. I think it's even here we couldn't get back to the EMA. The market's just really strong. I mean, this thing reversed. The buying came in, and you got a strong. This is a strong trend. Look how tight that is. Look how shallow all the corrections are. It's a shame I got stopped out on my runner on this one. I'm probably tightened it a little bit too much. I should have given it a little more room, knowing that we were probably going higher. I mean, it was pretty obvious. And the way I was doing, I just tried to get a measured move out of it back to the range, and unfortunately I only got a few ticks out of my runner because I tightened it too much. But anyway, we made this first leg up, and you can see you take your measured move right there, drag it up to the low, and we pretty much got a perfect measured move before it corrected. But notice where it's at. That's the highs of the range, the overnight highs, and look how long we've been away from the EMA and how far we are. That's a great play. Look at that big bearish bar. I like that. It's a little risky, but I like those kind of trades. And it could have turned and went the other way just like it went up, and it could have gone back down. It looked like it might for a minute, but that takes you into 2 o'clock. So there's nothing wrong with managing a runner after 2 o'clock. Just don't enter any new trades after 2. That's the way I like to do it. And there's several reasons why. Sometimes you get some good moves, but a lot of times the market will just kind of die off, the volume will dribble off, and the big problem is if you have a loss after 2 o'clock, you don't have any time to make it up. Where if you have a loss early in the day, you got plenty of time to get up, take a break, gather your thoughts, get your wits back about you, and sit back down and make it back. But if you do that after 2 o'clock, well, by the time you get up and take a break and come back, the market's closed and it's too late. So for that reason, I don't like entering after 2 o'clock. I think 2 o'clock is a good cutoff pit time. If that's the only time you can trade, maybe you trade from 2 to 2:30, but I still think it's a bad move, and I think you'll end up regretting it. But try it. Get on the sim and try it. Anything you want to do, test it, and test it well on the sim. But that doesn't mean test it for 4 or 5 trades or 4 or 5 days or probably even 4 or 5 weeks. That means test it thoroughly because the market's got many different personalities, and it's going to take you months to see a lot of them. So test something long term, but test everything. Anything you want to do, test it. And like I said, that doesn't mean 4 or 5 trades or 10 trades. That means test it for a long period of time to prove it out. And then and there's no doubt. So back out again here. That's what I saw today. Notice that really after about 10 o'clock, there's nothing but greens. But you don't want to try. You don't want to miss these. And again, new traders probably wouldn't recognize that as a strong trend, but it is a very strong trend. and that was a really nice sell off there. And if you entered there, that was a good trade, but that's a little bit aggressive. So there was several really good trades right out of the gate here. So really, if you start early, you'll probably be done early today. But anyway, that's what I saw today. I'm not going to beat around the bush with it. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next